Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Cleverly Jones, and today we're here to discuss episode 3 of the Netflix documentary Killer Sally. Episode 3 starts off with the prosecutor. Now, the prosecutor opts to hold the trial on Valentine's Day. He thinks that since the actual murder occurred on Valentine's Day, why not start the trial on this day also? Now, Dan, the prosecutor, he thinks that Sally is a bully and a thug. He argued in his case that Sally was a very violent person. However, Sally's defense attorney says she has the right to defend herself. So Sally says that she is not a manipulator and views herself as an unsophisticated lady. So we're introduced to Diane Diamond. Now, Diane works for Hard Copy, and she did a lot of the media press surrounding the trial. Diane nicknamed Sally the pumped up princess. She gave her this name because she was an attractive blonde. She was into bodybuilding, and she viewed bodybuilding as a bit of a subculture at the time. Diane admitted that she was so attracted to Sally's story just because of the way Sally's personality was and the way Sally carried herself. She also knew Sally's personality would attract an audience to the story, and I agree with that. That's why I was attracted to the story. When you see the pictures of Sally all pumped up on the tank, it makes you want to know more about her and what's going on with her story. So I would agree that she's an interesting character and something that I wanted to know more about. That's why I watched the documentary. Now, Diane also says that Sally's story happened around the right time. She said it happened around the same time as Lorena Bobbitt, Amy Fisher, Tanya Harding. So this was noted as the angry woman era. So this was just a time in media where they were highlighting women who had, domestic issues and actually took revenge on their partners. Now, Shantina states that there was a lot of press and media, and it was hard on her as a child to see all the negative stuff about her mom and her dad in the media. Now, John discussed how John talks about how his grandparents tried to shield him from the media, tried to make sure that they didn't read any reports or see any of the news articles, which I think would be very hard. Kids, especially at that age, they can read stuff, they hear stuff from their peers at school. So it was probably really hard for the grandparents to shield them from, all aspects of the trial. John does state that the grandparents did their best to keep the reporters away from them, and when the reporters would call, that the grandmother would hang up on the reporter. So we cut back to the prosecutor, Goldstein. Goldstein states that Ray was shot twice. He was shot in the chest and shot in the face. The first shot is the shot that ended his life. So really the second shot was unnecessary. Now, Goldstein thinks that Sally lied about the facts of the case and what happened that night. Sally stated that she shot Ray in the living room by the kitchen. However, the shell was found in the bedroom and she actually reloaded. So they know she had to go back to the bedroom to reload. Goldstein stated that the blood splatter proved that Ray was already down when he was shot a second time. He states that Sally's fate was changed by the second shot. Unfortunately, the defense attorney did not have a witness to disprove what the prosecutor said. Sally's attorney believed her best defense strategy was battered woman syndrome. Diane states at the time, not many people had heard of battered women syndrome, and Sally admits that she never heard of it at the time either. The defense attorney hired Nancy Kaiser Boyd to do a psychological evaluation on Sally. She noted how small Sally was, because when you look at Sally's pictures, you think that she's just this big, brolic female capable of hurting anyone. But she noted that Sally was really a short thing. Although she was muscular, I believe she was only 5'3", 5'2", so she was this smaller lady. She notes that she was very small and she was also very sad. She states that repeated abuse, such as what Sally suffered, can cause post-traumatic stress disorder. The documentary interviews Rachel Louise Snyder. She's a professor and author. She discusses post-traumatic stress disorder in more detail. She states the brain scans of people with post-traumatic stress disorder also mirror the brain scans of prisoners of war. Now, Sally admits that she suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder. She says she suffered it from Ray and admits to being just as sick as he was. At the time of the incident, Sally said that in her mind, she believed it was either her or him, and it was a live or die type of situation. Sally says during the night of the incident, she ran away and simultaneously shot Ray at the same time. But she does give a disclaimer, and she says she doesn't remember everything that occurred that night. At that point, Sally gets a little on the defensive with the interviewer, and she says she didn't, she wasn't a manipulator and she didn't premeditate this murder. She didn't plan anything. Sally also says if she did plan the murder, that she would not have spent a day in prison, which is a little cocky to me and kind of unnecessary to say during one of those situations. Just say it wasn't premeditated. You don't have to put any little sting or any little stab, little extra on it. Sometimes that ends up making you appear guilty. So Nancy ends up testifying on behalf of Sally. She believed the prosecutor thought that battered women syndrome was a joke. He called it the abuse excuse. So we come back to Goldstein, and Goldstein states that two things can be true at once, which is something that I kind of agree with. He believes that Sally was a battered woman, but at the time of the incident between her and Ray, he didn't believe that Ray posed an imminent threat to Sally. So basically, he believed that Sally could have left the situation. He didn't believe she was in immediate danger. So Sally says that Ray's friends testified against her. Shannon Brown was one of those friends. He stated that he met up with Ray right before he passed, and Ray told him that he was leaving Sally for Marianne. And even Sally admitted to the police officers during the investigation that she called and she threatened Marianne. Now, Shannon Ray's friend, he stated that Sally knew that Ray was going to leave her. She also knew where he was at that Valentine's Day, that he actually spent Valentine's with Marianne. Peggy Hook was Sally's friend, and she testified on her behalf. She stated that she saw the bumps and bruises that Sally suffered from. She also noted that Sally kept the abuse quiet, and the only reason why Sally told her is because she would ask Sally, like, hey, what happened? Why are you all bruised up? What's going on? So the defense had Shantina, Sally's daughter, testify. Shantina told the prosecutor that Ray was choking her mom. However, due to the level of emotion during the trial, the defense attorney asked that the testimony be stopped, which I agree with. That's a lot of trauma to put a child through. She had already heard the argument. She might not have seen her mom shoot Ray, but she was in the house at the time. She heard everything that went on. So then to put her on trial to make her testify about it, that's a lot of trauma that Shantina suffered through. However, Shantina didn't necessarily agree with it. She believed that the defense attorney could have done more, and she wished they would not have stopped the testimony at the time. And John also wished he could have testified, but understood he was too young at the time to testify on his mother's behalf. Now, Sally also wanted to testify in her own defense. However, her defense attorney tried to talk her out of it, but she was very insistent. And so, you have the right to participate in your own defense. So he had no choice but to let her get on the stand and testify. Hindsight being 2020, Sally wished that she never got on the stand to testify in her own defense. She now understands that this was the worst possible thing that she could have done. So when Sally finally got on the stand, she was very rigid and she showed no emotion. The prosecutor knew that if Sally were to testify, that he would dismantle her on the stand, and that's exactly what happened. He stated all he needed to do was to get her to concede to what happened and what she had done. In the documentary, he laid it out fairly simple. He asked Sally, did she obtain a weapon? Yes or no? Yes. Did she aim the weapon at Ray? Yes or no? Yes. Did she shoot the weapon at Ray? Yes or no? And yes. So basically, she, looked guilty right there on the stand. So had she not testified, she probably would have got off. But since she testified and conceded to all the things that she did, she looked really guilty on the stand. Now, the defense attorney, he knew at that point that they had lost the case. He stated that there was tons of evidence that the judge had excluded, but with Sally's testimony, that evidence was allowed back into the trial. Now, one of those things was, I believe it was a poster or a video where Sally is on there. So it had to be a poster. She's on there and it says like Killer Sally. And so the prosecutor simply asked her, do you go by the name of Killer Sally? And Sally said no. But the prosecutor presented the poster showing where she went by the name Killer Sally. So she looked like she was a liar right there on the stand. But in Sally's mind, she typically didn't go by the name of Killer Sally. That was a character for her. It wasn't something like her friends would call her or people would walk up to her and say, hey, Killer Sally. That wasn't the case. So in her mind, that's not a moniker that she went by. That was just simply a character that she played for one of her, videos. And she just happened to have a poster where it said Killer Sally. Now, the prosecutor states that he believes that in our society that we don't believe that women can be violent. But he says, in his role that he sees it every day and that women can actually be violent. However, Sally believes the prosecutor made her out to be a monster, and she's like, I'm not a monster, but that's the way she felt after the testimony. So when the verdict comes in, Sally was found not guilty of first-degree murder, but they did find her guilty of second-degree murder. So basically the intent to unalive someone unlawfully, and basically there's no excuse or justification or provocation to unalive someone. So that's why she got found guilty. So basically she wasn't as I explained earlier, they don't believe she was in imminent danger and that she could have walked away from the situation. Sally was sentenced to 19 years to life, which is crazy. Like, I felt like she needed to do time, yes, but I don't feel as though 19 years, I think that was a bit much and a bit excessive. No one could believe how much time that Sally got. They thought her sentence would be lighter due to the battered women syndrome. Sally started serving her sentence on the 1st of May, 1996. She went to Valley State Prison for Women, and unfortunately her children are 3,000 miles away in Allentown, PA. Sally states that being in prison taught her that life still goes on and you cannot make big demands of your family that's, on the outside. Shantina stated that her grandmother used to take them at least once a year to go visit Sally, but eventually that stopped. Now, interestingly enough, the reason the visits stopped were because the kids stopped wanting to go. They said that it was too many questions when they would tell their friends like, hey, I'm gonna, be out of town to go see my mom. They would get questions as to, where's your mom at? Why is she, here, there, and you're here? What's going on with your mom? And, Shantina says eventually they just said that they don't have parents. And, those questions went away and they stopped visiting their mother. We actually get to a scene where John states that he stopped speaking to his mom when he had a child because he states there's no way that she had them in mind when she did what she did. So he stopped talking to his mother for a while, but it appears that they've since repaired their relationship. Sally states that she went through 5 parole board hearings and have been denied all those times. She said she was denied because she never fully accepted responsibility. In order to get parole, you have to accept responsibility for what you've done and admit to, your wrongdoings. Now, Sally's defense attorney, he thinks that if this crime would have happened today, that Sally, wouldn't have went to jail and the outcome would have been different. Sally was released from the Central California Women's Facility in the summer of 2022 after serving 25 years in prison. She's now living in North Carolina, and when she first got out, she lived in a veterans transitional center. And this center helps vets get back on their feet who have been homeless or misplaced. Sally works in a warehouse now, and she says she has a great life. So we get to a scene where Shantina talks a little bit about her life and what happened, since her mother went away. She discusses how she ended up joining the military and how she met a guy there who was also abusive. So she saw the cycle repeating itself and decided to break off that relationship. And she just at this time, remains focused on her son. They also show John. John looks like he's had some struggles in life. John joined the military too. He stated that he did 5 combat tours and he currently suffers from PTSD. He's also been in a couple of drug and alcohol treatment programs. John states that he fell into drugs after his military tours, but I'm sure that his upbringing had a lot to do with the drug use too. He states that his entire life has been about violence and he's just looking to make a turn and just have a different life. Now, Sally met a boyfriend. She met a guy at the Veterans Transitional Center, and his name is Stuart, and they got married. So it has a happy ending that she ended up, she went through prison and she found someone that she could love and could love her, and he knows all about her background. So that is the end of episode 3. Please let me know your thoughts. Did you see the documentary? How did you feel about it? Make sure to comment below and subscribe. Thanks, and I'll see you again for the next one.